Alright guys, how's it going? Have a look at a selection of comments from my last video. This is a good video, but your analysis falls apart with you using the 3090 as the current flagship when Nvidia has stated that the current flagship is the 3080 which retail for $700. The 3090 is a Titan card, not a flagship. Comparing a Titan-like card to a 2080 Ti isn't exactly comparing apples to apples. 3090 is the Titan, not the Ti. I like the real take, but 3090 is supposed to be Titan level card. When you start comparing 1080 Ti, 2080 Ti, both of them have Titans, and now 3090 that is supposed to be the new Titan, it seems a bit off. Flawed by comparing the 3090 Titan class to Ti cards. Should have included previous Titans which are the true flagship. Man, you are so miserable. Everyone knows that you're an AMD fanboy, but this? Why do you compare 3090 with X80 GPUs? Compare it to Titans, then it would be fair. I feel like you should have compared the 3080 on price performance and not the 3090. Even if they didn't call it a Titan, it's still a Titan class card. 3090 is just a name, but it's overpriced like a Titan. The RTX 3090 should not be compared against the RTX 2080 Ti. Instead, it should be compared against the Titan RTX. It's actually the RTX 3080 that should be compared against the RTX 2080 Ti. You didn't use the Titan lineup in your reviews, fair, and something I would agree with, but the 3090 is the new Titan. You can read that everywhere. I think it's disingenuous to look at flagships but not include Titans, since the 3090 and 2080 Ti 2 is priced like a Titan. You shouldn't be comparing 3090, it should be 3080. The 3090 comparison belongs against prior Titan series. The only question I have is why compare the 3090 to the 2080 Ti? Everything I have read from Nvidia, from review sites, watching reviews, points to the 3090 as a Titan replacement. Now, I could go on and on and on, and some of you probably thought I did, but trust me, there were many, many more of these types of comments, and I'm sure by now you get the point. Listen to what Jensen said in his kitchen presentation of the 3090.
Several years ago, we started building the Titan, pushing the GPU to the absolute limit to create the best graphics card of that generation. It was built in limited quantities only through Nvidia. The distribution was limited. The demand surprised us. Creatives were making 4K movies, rendering cinematics. Researchers built workstations for data science and AI. Bloggers built broadcast workstations. Flight and racing simulation fans built sim rigs. There is clearly a need for a giant GPU that is available all over the world. So we made a giant Ampere. Ladies and gentlemen, the RTX 3090.
So he started off talking about them making a Titan years ago, and then said there is clearly a need for a giant GPU that is available all over the world. Was that it? Over at GeForce.com, the GeForce RTX 3090 is a big ferocious GPU, BF GPU, with Titan class performance. So note that absolutely nowhere has Nvidia made the claim that the 3090 is supposed to be the Titan replacement, or indeed that it is the new Titan. Nowhere. Their CEO certainly made you think of it in those terms, however. So let's analyse this Titan class performance statement. What exactly is Titan class performance? As usual, I'll use Tech PowerUp's huge array of benchmarks to find out. The first Titan was the Kepler Titan, which when it released in early 2013 was the fastest single GPU card available. At the maximum tested resolution at the time, it was 100 divided by 70 for the GTX 680, 43% faster than the GTX 680, which was the true mid-range Kepler card. 3 months after launching the Titan, Nvidia went on to release the GTX 780, which was a very heavily cut down chip. And this left the Titan, nice and easy one, 109 divided by 100, 9% faster. However, later on in the year, Nvidia released the GTX 780 Ti, which was the full Kepler chip, and that left 100 divided by GTX Titan at 89. That left the Titan in the dust to the tune of 12%. So that is clear as mud. What is Titan class performance during the Kepler era? It was whatever Nvidia thought they could get away with. Moving on to the Maxwell generation then, and the Maxwell Titan X. If we compare that to the Kepler Titan, it was 64% faster. And versus the true mid-range card of the Maxwell generation, the GTX 980, it was 32% faster. And this time it stayed ahead of the 980 Ti by 4%. The Pascal Titan XP, 100 divided by 58, was 72% faster than the Maxwell Titan X. And it was 100 divided by 76, once again 32% faster than the GTX 1080, which was the true mid-range card of the Pascal generation. But this time though, it was 4% slower than the 1080 Ti. Now moving on to Turing, I'm using computer base for these numbers as Tech Power Up didn't get an RTX Titan. But we can see the RTX Titan at 91.6, and we'll just have to use the 1080 Ti as a proxy here. And we can see that that was 44% faster. And we can see that compared against the 2080 Founders Edition, it was 36% faster, and against the 2080 Ti Founders Edition, it was 7% faster. And now finally with Ampere, the RTX 3090 is 45% faster than the 2080 Ti Founders, which makes it about 41% faster than the RTX Titan. And also, it was a very small 11% faster than the RTX 3080 Founders Edition, which is the true mid-range of Ampere. Or is it? I'll get to that point in a minute. But first of all, here are all those numbers in quick and easy charts. If you consider Titan class performance to mean how much the Titans have improved generation over generation relative to each other, we can clearly see that the 3090 is the worst Titan ever in terms of performance uplift. Even worse than Turing. And think about the extra power draw, making it clearly the worst in performance per watt terms. If you consider Titan class performance to mean how much faster the cards are versus their mid-range in the same generation, we can see that the general trend is around the mid 30%. And then we have this 3090 Titan languishing at 11% over its mid-range card. Not even 1/3 of the way there. And finally, the Titan versus Ti chart shows that Nvidia themselves don't even know what Titan performance is because they change that marker every generation. Sometimes it's slower than the Ti, sometimes it's faster. However, if there is a 3080 Ti with 20 gigabytes of VRAM as rumoured, then it could possibly be maybe 5% slower than the 3090, which would be the only way that this 3090 could then be justified as having Titan class performance, simply because it falls in the range of the Ti card. The overall picture though should be crystal clear to you. Titan class performance is an absolutely meaningless quote that far too many of you fell for. But wait Jim, the 3080 isn't mid-range, it's the true flagship. Jensen said it himself. Sure, let me remind you of what he said, and did.
Nvidia GeForce RTX 3080, our new flagship GPU.
Okay, so the 3080 is the flagship, according to Nvidia's CEO. So what was the flagship of the Turing generation? Was it the 2080? Very few would make that suggestion, instead choosing the 2080 Ti, like I did in the previous video. And also like Nvidia did. GeForce RTX 2080 Ti, Nvidia's newest flagship graphics card. Or that was the case at least as late as August. I had to go back to find this claim using the Wayback Machine, because today they are no longer claiming that the 2080 Ti is the flagship. That's pretty curious, isn't it? Why would they do that? And for Pascal, the vast majority of you would have chosen the 1080 Ti as the flagship, as I also did in that video. And once again, Nvidia agreed. The GeForce GTX 1080 Ti is Nvidia's new flagship gaming GPU. And this time, they didn't change it, just before the release of the new graphics card. Curious again. So, nice and easy. Let's compare flagship to flagship, generation over generation. In fact, I will let Nvidia do it. GeForce RTX 3080, the ultimate play. Scroll down a bit to performance and... Well, wait a minute. RTX 3080 compared to the RTX 2080 and the GTX 1080. And who can forget 2 times 2080? If the RTX 3080 is the flagship, like Jensen claimed, and too many of you swallowed, why aren't they comparing it to the 2080 Ti? You expect me to compare the 3080 to the 2080 Ti and label me as misleading because I didn't. Yet that's the exact agenda that Nvidia clearly promoted. This so-called flagship up against the previous mid-range. And here's the thing, looking through the comments, half of you seem to think the 3080 versus 2080 was a comparison I should have made, while half of you seem to think that the 3080 versus the 2080 Ti was a comparison I should have made. So how was I supposed to choose? In the end, I made the choice that meant most sense to me, which was comparing the true consumer flagships of each generation. So let's get back to that true consumer flagship of the Ampere generation. That's a 3090, by the way, and no, it's not a fucking Titan, at least not in name, nor, as you've just seen, in performance. While very insightful, this comparison is sorely missing the 3080. Comparing a Titan-like card to a 2080 Ti isn't exactly comparing apples to apples. Yep, it's not really a Titan-like card though. It is in many ways. Tons of VRAM, high price, top-tier performance. Every time I see this argument on price, I could smash my head through my monitor. I'm not going to say any more than this though. Is the RTX 3090 priced closer to the RTX Titan or the 2080 Ti? And do graphics cards generally increase or decrease in price generation over generation? And with both of those questions answered, do you believe that price of $1,500 makes this card more like a Titan replacement or a 2080 Ti replacement? Do I really have to explain this? So it doesn't have Titan branding. It doesn't have Titan class performance. Whatever that means, it definitely doesn't have it, no matter how you compare it. And now I've just demolished the shittiest argument of all, that one of price. So what does that leave us with? Well, let's take a look at drivers and optimizations next. As I'm sure you all know already, Titans have Titan drivers. They aren't quite on the level as the Quadro drivers, which are the true pro-level drivers. However, they are more fully featured than the GeForce drivers. GeForce RTX 3090. See something missing here? The word GeForce. So what this means is that the Titan cards perform better in workstation applications than the TIs, even if the TIs are faster in gaming, as we have sometimes seen. And so this one is really easy. If the RTX 3090 is a Titan like many of you suggested, then it'll be a simple sweep the board upgrade on the RTX Titan. It should clearly beat the old Titan in everything, right? Well, let's see what Linus had to say about that in his 3090 review.
Then there's SpecView Perf, where we can see that the RTX 3090 is... Sorry, wait, what? No, go back to that. CATIA ran over 40% faster on the Titan? How does that make sense? Okay, so as it turns out, this card, while it has more raw chutzpah than the Titan RTX, and was introduced as if it were a Titan-ish, it isn't a Titan. When we spoke to Nvidia, they explained that there are driver optimizations for the Titan that have not been enabled for the RTX 3090 and presumably won't. And they confirmed that these results are 100% expected behavior, which kind of sucks, because if this thing is mostly just a giant overgrown 3080 Ti at $1,500, what's the Ampere Titan gonna cost? $3,000?
I wonder what AnandTech's editor-in-chief Ryan Smith has to say about it. GeForce cards, GeForce RTX 3090, are still going to be artificially capped in tensor performance for market segmentation reasons. As with RTX 20 cards, that's your 2080 Ti, your non-Titan, FP16 tensor ops with FP32 accumulate is running at half the native rate. This leaves the door open to an Ampere Titan. And you can see my response. So does this mean you'll actually treat the card as it is, a furnace hot 2080 Ti replacement costing $300 more? That would have been an interesting review. And so it doesn't have Titan branding, it doesn't have Titan class performance, whatever that means again, it doesn't have Titan-like price, and it doesn't have Titan drivers. Alright guys, we're running out of options, but I need to make you believe that this is a Titan in order to justify its ludicrous price tag for a 3080 Ti. What's left then? I know. Let's slap on as much VRAM as we can. 2010 and the Fermi series. The mid-range card was a GTX 460 coming with 1GB of VRAM. The top card of the generation was of course the infamous GTX 480, which had 1.5GB of VRAM. There was no Titan card back then. 2012 in Kepler. The mid-range GTX 680 has 2GB of VRAM, while the GTX 780 and the 780 Ti later had 3GB. So that's a nice doubling of VRAM generation to generation at the mid-range and the consumer flagship. In comes the Titan with 6GB of VRAM, which is 3 times the mid-range and twice the top consumer card. 2014 and Maxwell. The GTX 980 had 4GB of VRAM. The 980 Ti, that had 6GB of VRAM. And the Maxwell Titan X had 12GB. Once again, total doubling of VRAM at the mid-range, high-end, and the Titan. 2016 and Pascal. The GTX 1080 had 8GB of VRAM, and this is all looking rather familiar. Surely we're about to see with the 1080 Ti 11GB of VRAM for the 1080 Ti? Alright, wonder what that's all about. Oh wait a minute, Nvidia, you 12GB again for the Titan XP. So in 2016, Nvidia started segmenting their top cards by VRAM amounts. Up until that point, every single generation for nearly 2 decades saw a doubling of VRAM at every segment. And how we all so easily swallowed this because Pascal was just so damn fast. 2018 and Turing. The RTX 2080 still with 8GB of VRAM. The 2080 Ti still with 11GB of VRAM. But not the exorbitantly priced RTX Titan. That was at least pushed up to 24GB. I would hasten to add, however, that nobody would have paid $2,000 for it had it only had 12GB. Remember, the Titan XP was $1,200. The RTX Titan was $2,500. And by the way, 12GB of GDDR6 costs nowhere near $500. And now finally, Ampere 2020. And let's just go with some of you guys for now, and we'll say that there currently is no mid-range Ampere card. Presumably you think that that'll be the 3070. Alright, so the top-end consumer flagship is the 3080 with a miserable 10GB of VRAM, even less than the 1080 Ti flagship of nearly 4 years ago. Let's get real here. The 3080 is the mid-range card, and we're all expecting to see a 3080 20GB or a 3080 Ti with 20GB. And assuming that does happen, does that 24GB of VRAM still look like Titan levels of VRAM to you? Look at the pattern. Titan X doubled the Titan's VRAM, but the XP stayed the same, and then it doubled again. So in 3 generations, it has doubled twice and not doubled once, which means that if the RTX 3090 does truly have Titan-like VRAM, it's only because you cherry-picked in your head the one time where Nvidia didn't double VRAM on the Titan. That's how you justified that as being Titan levels of VRAM, when in reality, a true Titan would have had 48GB. That's the only way you can justify that. And in order to justify that, you also have to stick to your belief that the 3080 is a true top card consumer flagship with its 10GB of VRAM, which, given that the incoming game consoles have 16GB of VRAM, that is something that you really, really want to think harder about. So by this point, I really do have to ask myself this. What on earth is making so many of you believe that this card is a Titan? Did Jensen saying that name once sway you? Or was it this Titan class performance claim, which I've shown is completely meaningless at best and complete bullshit at worst? How does that work?
All of this operates on psychological phenomena that we are all susceptible to. There was a famous experiment in 1951 known as the Asch conformity experiment. It was created by psychologist Solomon Asch, and it basically had people answer a series of very simple and obvious questions. Each card had a target line on one side and 3 lines of various lengths on the other side, and they were asked to pick which line closest matched the length of the one on the left. And this is incredibly simple. The answer is obvious, but these people were put into a room with 5 other people who were all in on the test. And when every card was revealed, they went down the line and each person in the room gave their answer, one at a time.
3.
But every once in a while, the actors in the group would give the wrong answer.
2.
The question is, when everybody else gives a different answer than what you're very clearly seeing with your own eyes, will you speak up against the group, or do you go along?
2.
On average, people went along with the group 37% of the time, and 75% of subjects went along with the group at least once. Later, when asked why they went along with the group even though they knew the answer was wrong, the answers tended to fall into one of 2 camps. 1, because they wanted to fit in with the group, also known as normative influence, and 2, because they believe the group is better informed than they are, or informational influence. We are all susceptible to groupthink and social pressures, which means that we are all more vulnerable to this kind of psychological trickery than we think we are. And the scary thing is that during this particular trying time that we're living through, we're kind of brainwashing ourselves.
Scary, isn't it? That 37% of people can disbelieve their own eyes due to groupthink. And that is with something as easy as picking the correct sized line out of 3 choices. So what chance has the average person got of knowing how a graphics card should be branded? Most people have got no clue about this stuff. So what do they rely on? Tom's Hardware. Nvidia GeForce RTX 3090 Founders Edition Review. Heir to the Titan throne. Over at The Verge, this new flagship card, wasn't that 3080? Anyway, this new flagship card is more akin to Nvidia's Titan series. Over at PC World, at $1,500, the GeForce RTX 3090 costs a full $1,000 less than the RTX Titan it replaces in all but name. And then Digital Foundry with the same thing, Nvidia GeForce, which should have been a giveaway, RTX 3090 review, the new Titan in all but name. A Titan in all but name, performance, driver support, optimizations, price, and VRAM. In other words, there is absolutely nothing about this card to suggest it's a Titan. It's just the fastest card of this Ampere generation. And if there is a Titan, it'll almost certainly be slower. Again, because like I told you in my Nvidia's Dumbest Decision video, people buying actual Titans don't expect massive 400 plus watt space heaters. And by now, they are accustomed to paying a lot more than $1,500 for one, which is the single biggest giveaway that this card is definitely not a Titan. So yes, you've been misled. You've always been misled by the tech press. The only question is, has it been intentional or not? We know that quite a few of them were sponsored by Nvidia or their partners, and trust me, they were very, very well paid. One would have to say that there must be a conflict of interest at some level. But I will also point out that Linus, who has been paid a lot of money by Nvidia for sponsored video, I assure you, he was one of the very few who stood up and said, this card is not a Titan. But simply put, far, far too many of you bought the rest of the bullshit suggesting that it was. You fell prey to this kind of groupthink after reading and watching reviews telling you, yeah, it's a Titan in all but name. That's fine. That's how marketing works on some people. The problem is, you then came to me and accused me of misleading you when, in fact, I was one of the very few who told you the actual truth. It's not a Titan. A point which I have surely proven beyond any reasonable doubt. I compared the 3090 to the 2080 Ti because that's exactly what it replaced. I compared the 3090 to the 2080 Ti as architecturally. That was basically me showing how good or how bad a progression Nvidia had made. And in that video, I even said that the 3080 would change the performance per dollar conclusion. However, if you do believe that that is the true flagship, then that would also mean that Ampere was the worst performance upgrade in history. A bunch of you, and there must have been thousands thinking it, if not saying it, focused on that single performance per dollar part and completely ignored the rest. All because Nvidia made you believe that the 3090 was a Titan replacement and not a 2080 Ti replacement, even though every fact, especially looking at it all combined, shows beyond any doubt that this card is clearly not a Titan. You instead chose to believe a bunch of tech press who have an interest in maintaining a working relationship with Nvidia, at least, and in many cases a paid relationship. And you chose to believe Nvidia's CEO, and a man with a vested interest in selling these cards to you, when he said the 3080 was the flagship, all the while comparing it to the mid-range of previous generations. You chose to believe all of that over me. Some of you who have been watching me for 4 years accusing me of misleading you deliberately when I was one of the very few trying to open your damned eyes and minds to the truth. And that is why I cannot do this any longer. I am done with this whole tech tuber game, as I said on Twitter and on Patreon. The fact here is, I've been losing interest for a couple of years, and I'm a person who is driven by various needs. One of those needs was a desire to help people understand how easily that they are being manipulated by marketing. This last video was the final straw which made me finally realise that some people will simply never learn. And to be quite frank, they deserve to be manipulated by marketing. If you were one of the people who told me that the 3090 was a Titan, then you deserve to be manipulated by these companies' marketing. Not because you fell for it. Lots of people fall for that. But because you fell for it, then accused me of lying to you instead. And look, I know that the large majority of you guys watching me are not guilty of doing that. You already learned not to trust a damn thing that Nvidia, Intel or AMD tells you without first running a very critical eye over it first. You know that I would not lie to you or intentionally deceive you for any reason. The problem here is, I am simply preaching to the choir these days. All these people running around losing their minds to Ampere? Just let them do it. There is nothing that you can do to stop them. They are simply fodder for these companies' marketing schemes, and they always will be. But I'll be back before the end of the month with an update on what I intend to do next. In the meantime, the web team and the overvolted guys will continue, and there will be more news on that too. As for the rest of you worried that this is the total end for me, relax. I won't be quitting doing videos completely. However, due to the loss of patrons who only followed me for the tech videos, I will have to do more work in other areas. So my video output will definitely be reduced. You can be sure that I haven't thought about much else for the past weeks, months, couple of years actually. I'll catch you later, guys.